Hello, and welcome to this week's extra horror thrill-packed episode of the Imaginary Movie Podcast, a podcast where we continue our journey to find out what is the worst alien movie. And you're in luck, Prometheus, because Alien 3 exists. My name's David.
Hi, David. My name's Sam, and yes, for you, because I think we've got all probably. I think have we watched every Alien movie now? I think we might have done. Maybe.
Did we do Covenant for the podcast, or did we just
done
watch
Covenant? No, we have. We watched it. I think it's for our 2017 episode. So I'm going to include that. We've done every other of the older ones. I think we might be all caught up.
I have a massively amazing piece of news for you, Sam, that I've never seen a second of those Alien versus Predator movies, but are we including them, or are we just...
No,
just
they
the
are
Alien,
definitely
just the core titles?
they are outside the canon, and I'm also going to include all the video games, although there are some good ones. There's loads of Alien novels, which I bought one once, attempted to read it, and realised even for a degenerate nerd like me, it is utter trash.
Why would you want that in text form? I'm genuinely curious what you thought you were going to get from Alien in text form.
Because, and this is very pertinent to today's 2012 movie Prometheus, is that the world building and the universe that Alien and the Alien franchise lives in, I think is really interesting. The kind of corporate capitalist future. Is great. There's all the space kind of retro futurism that exists with it. It's all really, really fun. And I think exploring that more is a good idea. Problem is, it's a book based off a very, very old franchise, and so it wasn't very good. Just like a lot of these type of things, like the Halo novels or whatever else, other things that are just kind of tangentially related. So I agree. Let's not do that. And that's why I have no idea where that book is. I have no idea where it is, and I'm happy.
Sam, you can't keep track of belongings anyway. I think the other day we once again came across. Here's a bit of Sam Cannon for you all.
Cannon.
Sam has the worst memory for things that have happened to him in the past of anyone I've ever met. I really do mean that, Sam.
True.
In every plausible. And I know you remember the important life events. I'm sure you recognise your children on the morning. Like, that's fine. I'm sure you remember your anniversary and stuff. I'm certain you get all the big things. But when we're talking about, a game we played once 11 years ago and you have no idea what I'm talking about, I'm like, oh, maybe I'm the weirdo. No.
No. You're the weirdo. You're the one who remembers so oddly specific things about my life that I'm like, Dave, have you got nothing else better to be doing than like, have you got a dossier on me that you're going back and checking? Because there's no way that you'd remember that in 2012 I bought a Dungeons and Dragons game or something. Like, why would you remember that? Why is that in there? What has not gone in? Because that is filling up the limited capacity of your brain.
It's not exclusive to you, Sam. I just remember things, and again, I don't think that makes me like an intellectual freak.
You're the freak.
I just remember things.
No,
it was a fun weekend I spent with my friends, Sam, and therefore I remember it. It's a fond memory, and obviously you've said trash.
Delete that. Spending time with Dave, straight in the recycle bin.
Exactly. Right, got through that. Let's never think about that again.
That's why I have committed our friendship down into bite-sized podcast episode
It's when you get early onset dementia in 8 months. This is all going to be really good for you to listen to this for the first time again.
I remember Dave, and I also remember watching 2001's Bandits together. So there we go. It all comes back down to that.
It's the only movie Sam's ever seen or ever wants to know about. So, Prometheus. Prometheus is the 2012 Ridley Scott directed prequel film, a bit of a reboot, a bit of a requel, which is a term we've got from Scream. Like, the franchise had been dormant for about 15 years. When was Alien 4? Mid-90s?
Yeah.
It must be in the late 90s, maybe.
Yeah. What's the sequence of this then? What is the sequence of Alien movies coming out?
You got Alien in the late 70s.
79.
Aliens is 84 or 85, maybe 86, around then, mid 80s. Alien 3, I think, is 89, 91. And then I think Alien 4 is 96, 97.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. It's one of those franchises that is really, I think, quite interesting. And that gap between Alien Resurrection, I don't mean in italics interesting, I mean genuinely interesting. That gap in from 97 to 2012 where this movie comes in, I think is, you might be thinking, like, certainly out the mainstream, and Alien goes from being something that's a deep science fiction movie in 1979 with a kind of horror element jammed into it, to a blockbuster, bombastic James Cameron, you get away from her, you bitch stuff in the second one, and then the middle ones are kind of fuzzy. It's definitely dormant. I think this is, for me, coming in to someone who is has now watched all the Alien movies. This is very much a return to an attempt to the science fiction. This is a sci-fi movie for first and foremost.
Well, like I said, it's a requel. We're going to do the same thing again. I think we can broadly agree that it's not as good. I think, like, I was being a bit flippant, but I think my ranking would be, that's right, we're ranking the Alien films again. Aliens, probably Romulus, then Covenant, then 4, then this, and then 3. I think a much, much worse movie. This is a worse story, but 3's a worse movie, so it loses that. And again, not that it's a bad movie. I think it's just the concept of it's odd, isn't it? So Alien 4 was still starring Sigourney Weaver. So the first 4 movies star Sigourney Weaver, and I fairly like, all of them contain a fairly like standard Alien like model, don't they? It's all the same Alien, more or less. It looks the same.
Yeah.
It moves the same. It acts the same. So this is a departure in a lot of ways because it's a brand new cast. There are no cast members. It takes place in the same universe. There's a lot of like stuff spread around to tell us that, and it doesn't feature the alien. If we don't include the last scene, because we'll get to that, there's no xenomorph in this movie as such. There's not really a chest burster in this movie as such. And on paper, I guess I'm not totally against that in terms of fleshing out this universe and having a different kind of monster.
Yeah, I think
which is what this movie does. It kind of takes it back to component parts, basically. We're seeing like different bits of the monster.
How do we get to? Yeah, I think I may have said during either Alien Covenant or Alien Romulus, I think I may have posited the idea before it's in this movie. What if you had an alien movie without the alien? Would that be interesting? Would that be something?
No, the answer to that is no.
Well, no, but I think there's potential for that, and I think it's interesting that actually, if I'd seen this movie, that would have been answered for me. I think in the form that we choose here today in 2012, I think definitely we're without a lot more ingredients going into this soup. I think we are missing something. We are missing a very distinct flavour without having the alien there. However, as much as I think we're going to spend probably the next 40 minutes kind of laying into this movie a little bit because there are some very significant problems with it, I have to say I was largely entertained throughout.
It looks really good. It turns out this Ridley Scott guy is a pretty good director, like, generally. He makes a pretty good looking movie.
Yeah. And the production design is just as you'd expect, and more from
2012 definitely feels like maybe the first iteration, like the first couple of 2012, 2011 maybe, the first years where I think a lot of the CG holds up really, really well today, whereas a lot of the late aught stuff, like, potatoey, and it doesn't hold up, and the leap from that to 2012 is quite large. So I think that helps as well, that this movie visually doesn't look like a movie from 2012 as such.
No, and I think all of that, I think the music and and the way that the vibes, we would say, in 2025 of this movie, I think is very, very good. Like the whole thing.
This movie's got Riz. That's what the kids are saying.
Got Riz. As a package, I think it is really interesting and it's really compelling. And there's so much that you could There's so many places you could go with this movie. And I think the problem is that the devil's in the detail. And as soon as you kind of start to dive into the specific elements that the movie decides to talk about, then things get
There are four
quite
things.
a
There are
lot
four
ropey.
things that make a movie good, right? A good script,
Check.
a good director,
Check.
a good cast, and good visuals.
Mm-hmm.
Right, good visual art, because I think that really is a factor in a lot of sci-fi movies.
Yeah.
And I think this has a good cast generally. I mean, it's so good that most of them are sat around twiddling their thumbs for the most of the movie, which we'll get into. I think visually it looks very good. There wasn't a lot of this movie where I thought, no, what are we doing here? It's grey. No, I think it's bright, it's vibrant, there's a lot going on. And I think the direction's good generally, because again, when you boil it down to like what people are saying on the screen, there's no way this movie should be as entertaining as it is, because I think the script that underpins this whole thing is so weak.
Yeah. I think that is
Kind of inescapable.
That is the big. That's quite a good little starting point for us, I think, isn't it? And in terms of going through this movie, cast, direction, visuals, and script, and we can save the script for last because that's where we're going to have some of our problems. On the cast, I think, generally, I think this is pretty well done. I think everyone's bringing what they can to the role, and I don't have. I'm not particularly bothered by anything. There's nothing there where I'm like. I've seen some criticism of the lead Noomi Rapace.
I think it's Noomi. I think that's how it's pronounced.
As Elizabeth Shaw. So, but that I think again is more about the.
Well, this movie was made in 2012, Sam. So you can't rule out it just being misogynist on the internet.
Yeah, true. But I think the issues, and we're starting already, so generally everyone's fine. But the problem is, as you've identified already with the casting, is that you've got these good actors, but most of them aren't really given much to do. And if we want to talk cast, let's also talk character. And then we can bring the scripting in terms of the specific things that happen later on. Cast and character then. If the casting's good, the characters are pretty terrible. Like, as an ensemble movie, which is kind of what this is going for, just like the 79 one, I think this really suffers from all of these actors, and there's nothing for anyone to do. And so you get all the way through the movie, I think you have moments where you're expecting a certain character to do something, and they do. They don't, sorry. And then at points where you wouldn't expect a character to do something, they do something, and you're like, why did you do that? What was the reason for that?
Let's boil it down from memory, right? So you've got Noomi Rapace plays Elizabeth Shaw. She's the main character. She's the final girl. She's the Ripley. Yep. I generally think the performance is all right. Most of the movie is just her. It's just Shaw.
Yep.
That's a solid character that embeds itself in your mind. Michael Fassbender playing the evil robot. Again, I quite like the performance. I think it's a bit hammy occasionally, largely again with what is he doing, but generally it works. You've got the husband who does not have a name in this movie, and you can't convince me otherwise. And
Charlie, played by Logan Marshall Green.
You've got the husband, and then who has got fucking R.I.P. tattooed on his forehead from the very first scene. I'm sorry, if you're married to the protagonist, you are not making it through an alien movie. Now, I'm going to include with the husband, I'm going to dump in all of the myriad scientists, because also, like, who could pick them out of a lineup or identify them?
There's so many of them.
There's like squeamish guy and
Scottish one,
stoner guy and Scottish guy and
angry guy.
They're all very bland, aren't they?
I think there's a real attempt to go for the working class slobs that we see in 1979 Alien.
Yes,
I mean, one of them even
tried to update
said
them to be like 2012 working, like 2012, like not the yuppies is the wrong word, but these are hipsters.
Well, they're scientists, aren't they? So even one of them even says very, very bluntly and very just like, oh, there's not a better way of saying that. Is like, I'm just here for the money, sweetheart. And you're like, okay, thank you for saying the loud part
You're
loud.
a geologist for hire?
Like, really? Like, they're not
Okay.
they're not space truckers like we see in 1979 and where they're all smoking, having, and we get that lovely sense of camaraderie, and or at least not camaraderie, even at least like opposition or whatever. But it's all organically shown.
There's a
to
parody
us.
there. You understand the characters and you understand that they're doing a job. Whereas in this movie, it's kind of like, hey, we've all woken up after 2 years of hypersleep, to get to this planet. And no one knows what they're going to do, and that's fine. But none of them are military; they're all just private contractors, and none of them seem to want to be there. And it's like, surely you'd have to be a fairly adventurous spirit to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to give up. I mean, minimum 4 years of my life to travel to this place to, investigate this thing. Like, no,
Yeah.
aliens. We're not interested in extraterrestrial life. Like, there's very little wonder in this movie, is there?
Which is odd, isn't it? Because the whole visual thing and the whole sound, which we maybe include in that in terms of what the movie's trying to show us and the emotions it's trying to evoke, is wonder. The soundtrack is very much a traditional Space 2001 sci-fi soundtrack of da, 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 da. Like, it's very much, and all of that, I think, along with the sweeping visuals of the planet and the way that it's all there for us. And yet you're right, there isn't the wonder. And the crew, I kind of wanted maybe them to be a little bit more in awe of what they're experiencing. I mean, they have landed on an alien planet with alien structures the first time, and almost none of them are interested. They're all just like, all right, I'm going to get my payday. Let's take the flamethrower with us. Great stuff, Let's take
It's
our
bizarre.
fucking helmets
None of
off.
the characters are distinct enough. Again, it's really bad that I've seen this movie twice and I can't name any of the... I can name a lot of the actors, but apart from Wayland, played by, for some reason, Guy Pearce, ?
Oh, that's just terrible, terrible, terrible choice. Let's talk about that for a second. What are we doing here? Are there no old people left
I think
in
maybe
Hollywood?
what I want to do is talk about how stupid this movie is from the beginning to the end, because I think... And then we'll have nice things to say at the end, and there are things to say about the characters and things, but the reason this movie fails is because it's not bad action, but the action is undercut by how stupid the plot is and how stupid and lazy the setup is. So at the beginning of the movie, we're digging in the fjords of Norway or something, and we find a cave, like Indiana Jones, and we break in, and there's cave paintings, and from those cave paintings, it's a star chart ? National Treasure puts more fucking thought into their mystery. We're going to go off and we're going to find these aliens who came here all these years ago. And that's the setup, isn't it? And it's so lazy and it's so stupid. And I'm sure there is a better way to set that up.
Well, I didn't feel that strongly about that specific element. I see what you're saying, and I think
Very bad visual storytelling, Sam. They pan to the wall, and there's a stick man, and there's 3 or 4 dots on the wall that are stars or constellations.
Yeah,
and
then
like,
we get
it. There's a map there.
And then we get the library scene later on. I think what this goes to, though, is they clearly want to speed us up and get us to, in space, into this situation where they're going to have lots of action and things are going to.
I don't
progress.
know why we couldn't. What's the rule, Sam? What do we always say with a long movie? Right? Cut the first act.
Yeah.
Get rid of this bit. Have them all wake up. Have Michael Fassbender go around and wake everyone up, and then have Elizabeth Shaw give the speech to all the scientists who don't know why they're there, and then we, the audience, can sit and listen with the scientists to why we're there, and then we can have the movie.
Which is what happens. The other thing,
Yeah,
if you're not,
but we also have the setup scene.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, so if you're going to either cut the first act, absolutely, or make the first act interesting and compelling, and have that as the scientists figuring out theories and doing the work, and almost give us a bit of flavor of how we got to this place. What does humanity look like now? Provide the context that we need to what I think is missing as well is grounding this story in the world that exists, and there is a you have to pick one, and it's certainly not 10 or 15 minutes or whatever it is of moderate preamble that gets to this point. We also have the very first bit of the movie, which is that looks like a statue out of the Empire State Building.
This is a bad creature design, isn't it?
Oh no, I like it. I actually really like it. I think it's cool looking. I think it's very, very like over the top and exaggerated. I really like the design of it. Drinking this black fluid, and then kind of just decomposing and falling into what is presumably the rivers on Earth, and life spreading across. Now, what I was expecting after that was some kind of like scene where we see Earth being propagated by life. Like we see because the DNA's kind of melding together. And I was expecting us to almost see the full gamut of evolution played out in front of our eyes.
We literally have the 2001 scene where monkeys beating each other with
exactly. This is what I was expecting. I was expecting to have like, we're going to see the little microbe turn into the tadpole, and the tadpole gets arms. Then 20 minutes later, we've got the internet and tarmac, and it's like I was expecting to see all of this, and the movie's kind of just like, nah, you're not going to get any more context. And so we don't get any context from there. We get no real context from the scenes you're describing. And then we're thrust into space with characters that we don't really know. And I think you have to pick a lane, and they're just trying to skate down the middle of this and not give us...
There's a certain element of some of it feels like scenes deleted, especially with... Let's talk about Guy Pearce now. Especially with about 3/4 of the way through the movie... 23-year-old Guy Pearce in makeup to look like he's 104 appears as Wayland from the Weyland-Yutani Corporation that we know from the old movies, because he doesn't want to die, so he wants to confront the gods and demand that they let him live forever, which is weak in itself.
That is weak.
But it also feels like something that we set up in the first act, except those scenes got cut, and so then it also feels like there should have been more young Guy Pearce, because that's the only reason to cast a young actor to play this role.
Exactly.
To have loads of flashbacks to them being young.
Exactly. Like this is what I'm talking about in terms of if you want to front load your movie, if you want to make this a political thriller with some aliens at the end or even halfway through, fucking great. I'm all here for that. Again, the context building, the world building is so important for this. And I don't understand why Guy Pearce is in this movie, in this role. I do not understand it. There's no reason for it. He's not young. He doesn't even have to pretend like he's taken some serum where he can tap dance like Dick Van Dyke in Mary Poppins.
He started in his Alien movie, yeah.
Yeah. There's no reason for this. And as soon as I saw him, I was like...
Is Dick Van Dyke still alive?
Probably. I think very, very close.
You carry on.
I don't understand why he's here, because there is no reason. Yes, it says is on Wikipedia. He's still alive. Holy shit. 99
years old.
Good for him. There's just no reason for it. And I think, you know what? I was immediately distracted by it. Immediately thought, that makeup looks terrible. And
it is the one effect of the movie that looks really, really bad. And it's also quite superfluous, even just from a plot point of view. There's nothing that... Because he doesn't achieve anything in the movie. There's nothing that Wayland couldn't achieve that you couldn't just had the robot doing on his behalf and not have him
just keep him
in the movie.
Just keep him a hologram. Fine.
Charlize Theron says, "Oh yeah, actually, like the scientists saw this. It was all a con. We're not here for that. We're here for this." And then the robot continues to do what the robot's doing, and then that would be fine. And it just makes the film feel overstuffed. And you're also sidelining your protagonist at this point to sort of stand and watch this scene unfold, which is a cool scene. Again, it's when the alien. This is confusing. So we're going to refer to the aliens as aliens, and we're going to refer to the creatures as creatures in this movie, because it's not the alien.
The engineers.
The engineers, that's a better term. So when the engineer rips Fassbender's head off, That's a cool scene. It's fun. It feels like good payoff of like it's subverting your expectations that you're going to get an explanation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, not even benevolence, but you're going to get an explanation from this guy because Michael Fassbender can talk to him, and it's like, oh no, fuck you. Actually, like I hate you. I'm going to kill you, and then I'm going to get in my flying WMD and go and nuke the twin towers again.
Yeah, just like the first time. Yes, so that is definitely a factor, and again, as we're progressing through this, the characters that we've got left, we've got Vickers played by Charlize Theron. We've also got the captain played by Idris Elba, who kind of have this weird weird role of they're opposing each other a little bit, but they're also kind of there's a tension here that never really clicks for me. It never really resolves. It never really presents us other than at the end of the movie.
Don't have a lot to do.
Other than at the end of the movie where Elba flies the ship into the engineer ship, and
but Charlize Theron, like apart from being butthurt because her dad doesn't love her in repeated scenes, and then the weird reveal that she's his daughter, she has nothing to do in this movie. Oh, and she bangs Idris Elba. But other than that, she does nothing in this movie to get squashed by the ship at the end.
It doesn't feel like she's evil necessarily. It also doesn't feel like she's...
Because the movie hasn't got any time for us to watch her do anything.
No. It's really bizarre. And I think you probably could have combined the two characters and you could have had a really interesting turn from Vickers, Charlize Theron's character, by saying, actually then, fuck you, daddy. I'm going to fly the spaceship into the ship and win. Nothing's going. You're not going to win.
Well, it would be the save the cat moment for that character.
Exactly.
It would be the humanity through line from that character. But it feels like almost a 2012 thing where we've got two women in a movie, so they have to be antagonistic. They have to be antagonistic.
One good guy, one bad guy. Yeah.
Just against each other, just diametrically opposed, which they are throughout this movie.
Yeah.
Rather than. Like, if this character was a man, you potentially wouldn't have quite such a confrontational role for this character. It's kind of odd. Tonally, it's odd. And again, just to remind the listener, we are moaning about this movie, which we did enjoy, but like all of these criticisms are quite valid also.
I think you'd have to be really, really not committed to the Alien franchise, not doing other things, other stupid things. So again, before we do that, let's take a moment. Let's have a positive moment. Let's have a nice deep breath. Let's be positive about this movie, because I think when we're landing and when some of the scenes when this ship is flying into the atmosphere and you can see this straight line row of structures and they're landing, they're going down there. The sense of wonder and awe, I think, is very much works in this scene.
The production design is very fun.
Holy shit! I'm just like, wow.
It conveys the idea of this being otherworldly and something we don't know about, and even some of the exploration as well. There's something quite engaging about this. Basically, this is like a. This is Los Alamos. This is this is Oppenheimer. These are engineers.
This is a WMD factory. Yeah,
in a hat, like shagging loads of women, and maybe being a communist somewhere in this weapons development plant. There's something really cool about that, and the corpses and the kind of like in Lord of the Rings, the Mines of Moria sequence where we're going, and there's signs of this epic battle that happened off screen ages ago, and there's something quite engaging about that, just visually from that point of view. That exploration is fun. You can kind of latch onto it.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot here, I think, that has a lot more potential than than what we see on screen, which I think
a lot of it's visual, obviously, because once again the movie comes in with like a sneaky right hook that you weren't expecting. We're playing Star Trek rules. We've gotten off the ship. The computer says M-class planet, Captain. So we're all taking our helmets off
because the actors don't want to wear helmets. This is, I think, we're coming to some of the most stupid parts of this movie. All of these scientists, and they are scientists, come off the ship, and immediately their concern is is either the money that they're going to earn, or they just want to get the fucking hell out of there. Like we're not doing any scientific process in terms of
We're not setting up any equipment. We're not sat taking photos of things. We're not
let's
sketching.
scan the
we're
planet
not doing maths.
For like 3 hours.
There should be a segment where we land. We set up camp at the front, and we say, and it takes us a while to get in. Right, we have to figure it out. We have to dust things off with the little like dusty things. We have to scan photos. We have to reconstruct like symbols. We have to try and decipher this language a bit. Yeah. Again, what we mentioned at the beginning is this isn't very good sci-fi. Like it's good space opera. I would say the themes and the visuals and the music work really well with space opera, but it's not good sci-fi because it doesn't really make a lot of sense. We're not science guys as a rule, but it's quite stupid. Like you said, it's this geologist smoking weed in his spacesuit, and hemming and hawing, and him and his mate going around basically like kicking things over and like
being really aggressive
and stuff. And you're a scientist on an alien on a planet with an alien like base full of dead aliens. Like, I'd maybe be a bit more interested in what's going on, a bit more like, wow, this is so cool, rather than them saying like, oh yeah, we discover an alien species like nuclear silo every other week. This is like rote for us. This is boring.
There's so many weird things. A couple of other ones is like, so you've got the geologist guy who doesn't seem to be very interested in rocks. He's not doing any geology. One of the guys is like,
well, it's because geology is a made up thing to study.
Yeah, but quite useful when you're landing on an alien planet to understand. Earth
geology, Sam? Come on now.
Yeah, doesn't the guy who's mapping the place get lost? Isn't that a thing that he can't find out where he's going? And I'm like, you're a cartographer, dude. Like, surely this is what you're supposed to be.
I'm pretty sure the blue bits are land.
Yes,
that's an Arrested Development.
Arrested Development. Nice.
Now, all of that, Sam, is kind of intertwined with, again, some bits that I like. I like that when they're in it looks like a big anthill, doesn't it? The base, almost. I like that when they're in there, there's the radio. Some radio doesn't work very well, and like, so that's part of the reason the guy gets lost is because their electronic, their equipment doesn't work very well in this thing because of the shielding or whatever. And it's never explained.
But exactly.
But
it's
all an artificial way to kind of inject suspense by having these two guys stranded there, and there's a dust storm and all of this. And it kind of works, but again, it's kind of like a failure of it being really clear on how we get from A to B to C.
And then it's A to B to C to D and all the way down to X, Y, Z, because the sequencing is very much like, okay, so things are clearly not great here. Something's happened on this alien, whatever it is, and we're just going to immediately take this head and put it onto a spaceship. Like, we're not going to.
Everyone knows, Sam, that when you take a decapitated head, especially one that's been sat there a while, it could be foisty.
Lick it, lick it straight away. Like,
what you do, Sam, is you jam a taser in its ear, and that will reanimate it. We've all seen Frankenstein. This is how it works. Electricity plus dead body equals a live body.
This is it's
bad science.
It's so silly. The worst science, though, the baddest science of all this thing is how the goo works. Clearly, this alien goo stuff is whatever the alien weapon the engineers have decided, and that will eventually become the xenomorph, and that's clearly this. But it's so inconsistent all the way through the movie. It's so inconsistent. Now, at the start of the movie, the very, very first scene, we see the big alien buff dude drinking some of this. I presume it's the same stuff. Maybe it isn't. Maybe not, but it's black goo. So I don't know. Like, again, the film's not very clear. He drinks it, his body gets broken down, and then he falls into the ocean and propagates life across Earth. Okay, but what's happening to the black goo? I mean, you will literally see his DNA being ripped apart and reconstructed, and it's all dark.
It's really
and so does that mean? Hold on.
Really
does that
poorly
mean?
Explained.
Does that mean then that from the beginning, the xenomorph DNA is on Earth now? And does that mean then that humanity ultimately is has xenomorph DNA as part of it.
The movie's not that clever, Sam.
I know it's not, but these are questions I was asking from the first minute, Dave, from the first minute of the movie, and I was waiting for them to be paid off.
It's like they had. It's like the visual artists were kind of at odds with the rest of it. So we have the black goo, which looks cool, and the big vases, which don't seem like they would, survive space flight very well, and all the rest. And it's almost like Romulus, where we have the injection that basically turns you into an alien incubator. But the reason we have that is because we've taken alien DNA and reverse engineered it, and it's like they did that before and said, but the timeline's got messed up here. The goo's the starting point and the xenomorph's the end point, but it's kind of like also isn't, and it's confusing. The idea, I guess, in the movie is that the scene at the beginning shows the technology, which is this goo that breaks apart your DNA and brings it back, and then the goo we see later is like a weaponized version of that rips apart your DNA and turns it into the basic xenomorph. And again, there's no answer, Sam, because it doesn't make sense.
But respectfully, I think that's retconned, and I'm not suggesting that. I think you're giving it a good go as to trying to create some logic for this, but I just don't think it's there. The goo gets worse. The goo gets worse because we also get so many different various uses of the goo when they're on the planet. David, we haven't talked about Michael Fassbender yet, who is obviously doing a great performance that they liked so much they brought him back. But David gives it to Holloway, the husband, who has like this horrible mutant fucking death. It's absolutely just awful.
Don't worry though, he bangs his wife beforehand just for plot reasons.
Yeah, obviously that is a horror movie trope. Sex equals you're going to die. Don't forget that. But then let's just keep on with this. We also get the guy who turns into like zombie mega strength monster. I think there's some of the worms. There's like worms that get the goo on them, and they turn into those horrible snake things.
There's a snake swimming in the goo? ?
And then
that attacks.
And then Shaw has the baby, has the alien snake baby, which was implanted during,
which then in turn implants
from Holloway
an egg into the engineer, which then becomes a xenomorph.
Just the sheer inconsistency, the sheer laziness.
Like you were saying, Sam, there's almost like the movie's trying to make a through line and say that the xenomorph is the end result of the combination of the human DNA with this thing, but it's not really saying that. It's not what the movie's about, and it's doing it in a really ham-fisted way.
I just think it's poor. I just think it's really poor. For me, it's one of the biggest things of inconsistency throughout the movies. Like, what is it that this stuff does? Like, is it a weapon? Is it and maybe there's a good reason for that. Maybe it's about the fact that it adapts. The goo is intelligent enough to adapt itself to be the most favourable, which is very much something that Alien has throughout. But
the hand-wavy "a wizard did it" explanation is that it's a bioweapon. It's a bioweapon. This is not the bioweapon you're looking for. Yeah. And that's kind of what the movie's saying. And again, it comes down to the flaws of like, this isn't very, very well plotted out. You maybe should have had a good sci-fi writer do a pass on this and say, oh, well, if this was a plot, if this was a story, I would change this, this, and this, and this, and make it a bit more believable. Because it doesn't have to be scientifically accurate. It just has to be believable.
And consistent.
Explained in such a way that it follows the internal logic of the movie.
Yeah.
Which this doesn't do.
I think fundamentally there isn't an internal logic of this entire film. We get a little bit more in terms of like how does this all ultimately end up in the basic part of the movie, which is that you've got David the robot who's trying to kind of carry out the wishes of Wayland, played by Guy Pearce, who is trying to, as you say, somehow stay young by convincing the engineers who made them to, I don't know, to something.
There's a religious element throughout this movie that. So Numi Rapace, write in Numi Rapace and tell us if we're pronouncing your name wrong. Naturally Movie Podcast at gmail.com. there's a religious through line through this movie, which is that quite frequently, so Rapace is arguing with other characters about she's religious, she believes in God, which is you're stood on an alien planet and there's this goo, right? And you're in this abortion machine and it's pulling this alien out of you, and your husband's been lit on fire with flamethrowers, and this bioweapon is wreaking havoc on all of the crew, and you believe in God. I mean, track record, God, yeah, it seems to be fairly par for the course, but like. But the movie,
who made the engineers?
Basically saying like that is the movie's almost positing that it's not mutually exclusive. Like God could exist and these engineers could be responsible for creating humanity, and it doesn't really explain it very well or lean into it very well, but it's present throughout the movie in a really odd way.
It's present on a surface level, and it never really. I don't think it's a theme. I think it's a feature of this movie. I don't think it's actually a thematic element that we want to explore, because if we did, I think we would have some very, very different decisions about how the engineers are portrayed. Because I think the ultimate end point for me, and the bit that really, really cemented how little I think they knew what they were doing when they wrote this movie, is that as soon as the engineer wakes up, he doesn't lean into the theme of the creator by saying in his own language or whatever else, "Oh, my beloved creatures, you have found me and you have come here and you have, you know, you looked on upon the face of God and here we are." Like, he wakes up and he immediately, for no reason whatsoever, starts trying to kill them. And so if we're thinking about it in terms of these people are God or not, the question is why are you waking up and seeing your children? And they even explain, I think, quickly that, you know, we've come here because you made us. Why is he trying to kill them straight away? Other than being a monster, other than being a Frankenstein monster, what is it that is driving the engineers? Is it that they have created a monster that is worse in humanity than the xenomorph? Because he's flying off to Earth. He's flying off to Earth very clearly. That's what they say.
The movie says, Sam, at repeated points, that basically they figure out that this is a military facility. They've developed this weapon, and the ship was up until the accident happened in the Alien movie we didn't see happen to all these engineers, that the way it was supposed to take off and fly to Earth and destroy all life on Earth. But
they created life on Earth.
I know. Literally, Elizabeth Shaw says in the end, in the epilogue, in the fucking captain's log, that they were going to they created us, they were going to destroy us, and then they changed their minds, and the answer doesn't matter. And you're like, then what the fuck is the movie about?
I think if you want to having the religiosity all the way through this movie is a great idea. There's so much actually to explore about that. But my God Almighty, are they not interested? Are they not interested in going down these routes? Are they not interested in having any real in-depth discussion? Because actually, what I was expecting was the engineers to come and have like a conversation and say, "Hell, you've made it here," you know, and maybe even to learn a bit more about humanity, and then realize the mistake they made of, you know, several thousand years ago when they came to Earth and propagated life everywhere, or for them to be benevolent and say, get out, leave this place, we went too far, and then explain maybe through some kind of flashback that actually when we came to Earth we had this goo and we thought, brilliant, we can spread life across the universe, we can build this, we can plant the seed, and then we went too far, and that's why the engineers are all decrepit and decayed and nothing has been left, is because they destroyed themselves, and the engineers are trying to warn us.
Ways you could have answered this. There are a million, Sam, different ways you could have answered this, and any of them would have been fine. And even I don't dislike the subversion of they wake him up and they want answers. If the build-up had been decent, they wake him up and he wants answers, and no, he just rips someone's head off and then he's going to start the ship and complete his mission. Because like it is an alien movie. Like,
But what's his mission though? Why?
well, but I don't. The thing
not
is,
asking you
Sam,
to
like
answer.
that would be fine if you earned that.
Yeah.
If you had explained something about what these creatures want and think and feel, with we've managed to access the computer a bit, or we've managed to decipher these texts a bit, and we figured this out in the front half of the movie. But it's kind of straddling that line of like the science fiction isn't very good, and then but they spend way too much time on it, and then it means the actual like alien part of the movie, the monster part of the movie, is also like really disjointed and not complete, and
Yeah.
almost entirely a product of these people being fucking idiots.
It's stupid city all the way through. Before we finish, I want to dive a little bit more into what is my potential fix, because I think there is a really good movie here. But I kind of, as we've been saying, what I want a science movie. Because this isn't Alien Prometheus. This is very much distinctly Prometheus by itself. So I think in terms of letting the audience know that this isn't going to be an alien movie, and it largely isn't. You know, we get a bit at the end, and we get the threat of the pathogen and all this stuff. But my fix is to really, really let's front load it on Earth and have more of the science on Earth, more of the exploration. Make it a mystery. Make it about trying to figure out how did humanity begin. You know, have some science going on, and then when they manage to get away, and maybe we have, and I think this was included in an earlier script. We have a young Wayland who says, I want you to go out there and I want you to try and find them, try and find the engineers. And they think, oh yeah, it's because he's being nice, and actually no, it's because he wants to live forever. That can be a nice payoff that we get later on. Then we have on the planet, we have actual science. We have geology, we have exploration, we have a bit like Interstellar, you know, when they're walking around, seeing the landscapes. We get to actually enjoy some of that. And then the reveal is, yes, the engineers are real. We've found them. We've even spoken to them. And as I've just described, their message is run, escape. We went too far. And the fundamental thematic element of the movie is that actually God that created us, that came onto Earth and propagated his seed, was a failure. That he failed and he went too far. He touched the face of himself and has managed to fuck it all up by creating the xenomorph. And then later on in the other film series, you get to really explore actually the alien stuff, and maybe there's an alien there. But I just think there's so much better ways of exploring all these ideas. And this movie is like, no, but would you like to see someone dodge a massive spaceship by running forward in a straight line? Because that's what she does.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of one of these movies that gets by on its looks. And
just like you, Dave.
Pretty much. But when you dig down into the substance, there's a reason this was quite polarizing to fans when it came out, because it's both not an alien movie in a lot of ways. Like you said, it's a prequel in a lot of ways. Both not appealing to old fans of the movie, and maybe just a bit backloaded with nonsense lore for new viewers. Like if you're picking this up as like in 10 years, it'd be interesting to see if people, you know, kids, because presuming they're watching anything that isn't TikTok by then, there'll be a new thing that we can't even comprehend.
Top tick coming soon.
Yeah, that was yeah. You should copyright that, Sam.
I've got the URL.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that if you were going back, and we sometimes do with old series, like, oh, where do you start and what's the watch order? Like, you shouldn't watch this first, because almost everything that it sets up in the movie and it explores isn't really a factor in the old movies, and they more or less abandon it wholesale when they do Covenant, which is much more in the vein of the previous Alien movies, and then Romulus, which is hugely in the vein of Aliens as well, and
Scream in Space, yeah.
Exactly, in Screaming Space, as opposed to this, which is kind of like this. It is interstellar-y. It's kind of the same era as Interstellar in the look of it, and 2001: A Space Odyssey. It is a grand kind of like sci-fi exploration that ultimately fails to shed light on any of this stuff because they didn't know, and because they hadn't figured it out, because the script is really poor.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting, really. Like, what is the alien canon here? Like, are we to take everything from this movie and just throw it in the bin? Which, like, I totally would be in favour of, but it's hard to make a choice, isn't it?
The canon I'm taking away from this is that alien DNA is in all humans, because that's what the movie presents to us. So at the very start, there's just, which obviously isn't true. Obviously, that's just not what happens throughout the rest of these films. And yet, as usual, we sit and moan about a movie for 40 minutes, and then we come to the conclusion that actually the process of watching it wasn't horrendous. I'm just because of the world they've created. It comes back to that. The world of Alien is fascinating, it's compelling, it's interesting, and I want to learn more, but not enough to read the books. And yet, this movie kind of like squanders my interest by instead focusing on stuff that's rather just isn't the theme thematic elements that we're exploring throughout the rest of the series. There's so many other confusing things that come up in this movie. We haven't got time to get into all of them, but I do think. I wanted this movie to be something different than it is. And that's a very frustrating feeling when you've got this idea in your head of like, wow, we could explore all of this stuff. And the movie's like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to have a woman have a cesarean section and then 10 seconds later be running down a hallway.
It's like they thought that was a cool scene, which it is. And then they built a whole movie around it.
Which is kind of the whole movie, isn't it? We've got this would be cool. Yeah. This would be cool. Idris Elba will fly his spaceship into another spaceship.
No, I want
that
Idris
would be
Elba.
Cool. Idris Elba. That's his nerdy brother.
Therese Sharon.
Therese Sharon.
Rumi Napace. I mean, that doesn't sound any different, really.
No, that could be it.
But yeah, I mean, I come back to my earlier initial point, which is, boy, were you lucky that Alien 3 got made, because that really wipes your face, Prometheus.
Yeah. And it's mad that they made more.
But still, this is definitely worth a watch. You're not wasting your time. It's a little bit long, and obviously it's cheap as fuck, like we said, but it's fun. You'll enjoy it. Visually, I bet this was a good cinema movie, actually.
Yeah. It's definitely the last one that I've seen, and it's definitely the last one that I've seen. If that makes the last one that I would choose to see, and the last one that I did see, and I'm very happy that
you should, because it's the first time you'd seen this, wasn't it?
It is indeed.
You should revisit Covenant at some point.
Yes,
having watched this,
it will contextualize a lot more. I think. Definitely.
I think it'll make it even clearer in Covenant that they set fire to that first movie. Apart from they were like, oh yeah, we liked Fassbender. Let's have him back.
Yeah. Well, again, Fassbender, amazing. Love the performance, and I love robots in films. Anyway, I think that's always a good.
Robots in disguise.
Robots in very much not disguise, because they just pretend to be robots. Right. Well, we have. I think we've concluded 2012's Prometheus. I think we've run out of Alien movies for now. Until
I'll tell you what. The last thing I want to touch on before we finish is. You know how we looked at obviously the earlier iterations of this, and we were talking about how the franchise was made. It's now getting. I think there's a TV show coming out, and this happened with Dune as well. And obviously the Disney have done it with Marvel and with Star Wars, and it's kind of like this.
There's
we're
money
just going to get loads of like really fucking like high production value, but bang average in terms of quality. Just like TV, not even adaptations. TV. Supplementary materials to all of our movies now.
Alien Earth, and it's coming out in 2025,
which is this year, so that'll be interesting to see how that is.
It's coming on to Hulu FX on Hulu, so that's not like a premium channel, is it? I mean, they'll
license it to someone over here, I would have thought. probably Now TV or Disney. I would have thought
It's going to be. I mean, who knows? Let's not prejudge it. And I'm generally open to more. I'm
like
open
we
to more
said,
of this
they
stuff.
can chuck as much shit at the wall as they like. If it's not good, I just won't watch it, which is fine. That's the contract.
Yeah, and I think it's supposed to be more in the vein of 1979 Alien than some of the more polished stuff. So you never know. You never know. And as long as I think, Dave, we're not pivoting to a Alien novel podcast, I think we can probably enjoy this expanded universe Alien stuff quite freely without having to worry. Or we just watch Alien 1979 again, because that is just such a perfect film. Perfect.
The original Alien is a peak which they've not reached since, and I will fight anyone who disagrees with me, especially all you Aliens wankers.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Fuck you.
It's fine to say Aliens is a really good movie, because it is. It's a great movie. It is not as good as Alien.
If you think that, you need to delete this podcast from your feed immediately. We don't want your custom. We don't need it. We don't want your listeners. Just leave us. Never download a podcast. Oh no! Look at I'm watching our download figures live. Oh God! Please come back! Please come back! James Cameron, you're a genius.
Come back, Zink. Come back.
Come back.